All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to another live redesign session. So in this video, this time I'm just going to jump right into things, but in this video we're going to be talking about Versoly. Versoly is a landing page builder, and it's focused on building conversion-focused websites. So we're not going to be covering any of the marketing pages, but what we're going to be covering is some of Versoly's UI. So if I click in the try it for free, we'll see this is this is the page builder here and all of the functionality. And after looking through all of this, I think that there's I've went over this a couple times, and I think there's one place that we'll want to start, which is really just this primary first screen and some of these form elements on the right. See if we can clean that up a little bit, but also maybe make some just general UX enhancements here or there. One of the first things that I noticed is that when you get in here, there's no sort of onboarding experience. I think that, creating some sort of like actual highlighted onboarding experience where it would say, hey, here's your theme and here's what theme means and here's how to make changes, etc. I think that that would be really helpful. But in lieu of that, I think that what might be even more helpful is, just having a, hey, is this your first time here? If you're struggling, here is a set of tutorials, so screencasts similar to what I'm doing now, where you're just saying, hey, here's how to do X or Y, etc., and building something out like an actual set of documentation for people. And maybe you have that already, but just creating something like that for people to be able to reference and kind of help educate people. Because I think that my first experience with this is that not knowing how it works, there's a large learning curve, and I know that there will be with any tool like this, but I think that you can help ease that, make it easier on people by, essentially giving them somewhere they can go to get those tutorials. But aside from any sort of onboarding experience, I think that the rest we'll probably just get right into. But what I did is I took a screenshot here and I just pulled the app into Figma, so I can, make some tweaks here, cut and copy things. We'll see how things go. But so this is our original. I'm going to duplicate this frame here. And the first thing I notice is this gray bar. And if I go here, when you scroll up and down, that gray bar is there. I think it's a sort of container in some ways. And I think that it's just taking up space, because with something like this, I mean, there's so much here that I think you want to save space wherever possible. I mean, something like this gray bar is probably 35 pixels. I mean, that's just valuable space that we could use, for the rest of the UI for the people designing their website. So one of the first things that I would do, and we'll see actually how this goes. It's going to look really, one thing that I could do, I'm trying to think of the easiest way, because I don't want to recreate a bunch of stuff here, but thing that I'm going to do is actually duplicate this. So in these videos, I'm doing a lot of these little hacky crop methods. But what I want to do is just get this portion of things. And we're going to pull this in. And okay, now I have this piece, which then I can go ahead and move that up right to the edge here. This isn't going to be perfect, of course, but that's not the point. We're just kind of giving ideas for improving the UI here. And then below that, we can just create a rectangle here. Drop it back one layer, bring it down, we'll line it up to the bottom, and we'll just make that white. So now, let's see, we can uncover some things here. We'll just stretch that out so it looks somewhat similar. But now you see, so we've essentially gotten rid of that bar. That highlights another problem here, though, is that our navigation UI is the same color as our backgrounds here. Most people are going to be using a white or a black background, so if they're like a very light or a dark background. But I think one thing that could do is either create a sort of border here. So starting here, what I'll do is I'll just Actually, I'll just make one pixel squares here, make life easy. So we could have a border similar to this. This isn't exactly the solution that I would pick, but just for brevity's sake, let's say something like that. So now we have actual separation here between our elements, so we know what is navigation and what's not. What you could do is have a sort of shadow is another possibility, but I think that ideally you would just make this a different color. So if I actually go over here, I don't want to block out all of the different elements, but we will, this is one of the challenges of doing one of these, is that I don't have the actual, I haven't recreated everything in Figma because that would just be an absurd amount of time. But we will use whatever hacks we can to imitate that. Actually, what I want to do is take this color, make that 10%. Let's see, we'll make it 20%. We should start to be able to see a little bit of a difference here. And then we'll duplicate that, we'll pull it up here. This is going to mess up the colors for everything else, but you kind of get the gist of what I'm getting at here. So that should be there. Okay, and now we've got some altered colors, and even if I was to take this and this rectangle and just hide them, you'll see that now we've got a little bit of separation. And of course, like, these colors aren't great, but I would separate the colors from the navigation elements. We'll just pull this down. Why not? Change the navigation elements versus the actual page elements to give us some separation. Looking at the next thing, what I really want to get into is these form elements over here. But I think one thing that's coming to mind is that we have a lot going on this top section. I see a sign up for free. I could see why that is important to have available. Open code editor is blue. I'm wondering how many people actually use the code editor, because this blue and this green are really like drawing people's attention the most to things that they can do. Whereas I think that maybe this open code editor doesn't deserve that much attention, and instead maybe it could be a gray. Let me actually go back here. What font is being used here? Apple. Okay, so system UI. Let's see if that comes default in Figma. I'm not even sure. System Apple. No. Let's see. I think like San Francisco might be in here. SF. Let's see. Let's just drag this up. That looks about right. And then what we can do is take this. We'll actually make this the same color as the background here. We will center this, and we will give this a stroke of this color. Actually, we're gonna remove the fill. Oh no, we need the fill. I just have to actually select this myself. Go like that. We'll take this and we will drop down the brightness, increase the saturation a little bit, make this almost gray. Of course, it's not like lined up perfectly, but that's because the blue is under there. Maybe we want it to be a little bit, easier to see than that. So that isn't perfect. We're also going to add the border radius that he had. that isn't perfect, but I think just in general, we can see like here, if you do a little like squint testing, try and see what stands out. Of course, all this orange text on the page, but I think that this bottom piece right here to open the code editor definitely sticks out a lot. And I'm not sure that that's absolutely necessary. It just depends on how much people actually use the tool, because once they know where the code editor is, they'll know where to find it, but we don't want it like distracting people, if that makes sense. We have up here, we have our settings bar, and our little thing is locked above this, our thing. But what I'm thinking here is that we have all these settings, and I'm trying to understand what we can move to get things to be a little bit clearer. So I think personally, I'm going to hide this. We get the point of what that's there for. I'll put it back in a minute. But I think that in general, this sign up for free is kind of jammed in here. And this settings bar, I think that there's a better place for it, because if we go here and we look at, let me exit this, we look at settings, these are all like the website settings. So I feel like along with all the other stuff for the website, it should have its own spot right here. Like maybe just a gear icon and say a little settings. We will do something similar, and we'll duplicate this and then do our crop thing that I've been doing. So we don't really have a better option. So we'll crop this image to just get this top nav bar. And what we're going to do is chop off the settings, and we're going to chop everything off from right here. And we'll just move that over. I think that the only problem with this is that we'll duplicate this again. This is, of course, very choppy, but it's basically the best option that we've got for making this look the way that we want it to. And we'll take the, actually, we don't want to move all of that over, because I have a better idea for that. Instead, we're going to keep this here. Actually, what we can do is go back a couple times. So I can delete that because that's our second one. I can move this back over. All that I want to do is actually take this sign up for free button and put it over our settings button. And then, of course, we're going to have to, let's see. I should have just kept the other bar and duplicated it again. So we will just undo. Now we'll duplicate this. We'll chop it to just the sign up. Scoot this all the way over into the corner. Move this bar over to where the settings is covered now. So we still have things set up in that sense. And then what we're going to do is we're going to cover this. Of course, I know that this is very janky, if that's not already intimately clear, but I think what you'll see here is that we've removed the settings, and we're going to put the settings. Let me just go back here. Let me see if I can just copy and drop in this SVG. Ah, beautiful. So now we've got our icon already. Line that up with the middle. We will take our settings. I think this is medium or semi-bold. and we'll want to move this forward so it's covering that as well. It is a little pixelated. I'm not sure exactly what color these are. If I move this over, they're just off black a little bit. And of course, sizing and everything isn't perfect. I just don't want to spend a ton of time, you know, on little things like that, because I think it's more like the ideas of things moving around than it is the specific implementation that's important. But for this settings, I just want to make it a little bit better, so we don't want it to look terrible. And I think this is actually bold, and that is starting to look all right. Maybe it's size 12. Yeah, that's fine. We'll just leave that for now. So we have a new settings bar over here. We've removed it from up here. We still have, now we have a little bit more space. So it's like, oh, here is our screen with elements. We have our before and after, this like code block buttons to save, preview, publish. So I think auto saving might be a worthwhile implementation. I'm honestly not sure how difficult that would be for you to do, to just schedule. Even a basic implementation of it is scheduling a save every change. But I think that would further reduce the bloat of things that we have going on up here. And of course, once someone signed up, this would go away, so we'd get a lot more space back. But that's something where this save might be able to get removed. Now, I want to look at these other elements up here in the nav, because I don't know what the point is of this unhide or hide all blocks. I'm just curious. I wish, like, this is one of the downsides of not being able to actually talk to you, is wondering what the hide all blocks feature is used for and how often it's used. So it looks like it saves its spot, but I don't know why you would want to hide all blocks on the page. But if we could get rid of that, that's another element. If it's not that important, that's just, you know, reducing clutter, because if features aren't really being used or they're not important, that's something we could easily remove. Or we could put it down with our code editor, because these look like they get pretty far, but I don't know how deeply nested someone's going to get before they actually hit there. So, you know, we could, just for now, I mean, this is not an ideal solution. Of course, we would want to consolidate the space here. Let me think here. Assuming that we can, that feature is not as important, we could take another version of this and just say hide blocks. Let's see, what do we have here? 20. So just add another button there and remove it, so it's not, you know, in people's face. These are just ideas for reducing clutter and not drawing people's attention to things that they don't necessarily need to use, that, or that might confuse them. Our goal with this obviously would then be to let's just do this, because why not? We can take this, move it to the front, move it over to there, and then pull this over like that. So in that sense, now we still have our, you know, nav elements are on their own. We've gotten rid of another nav item. I think that, like, removing items from people's, like, primary navigation bar is probably a win on the UI side. But let's see if we put this back. Okay, and let's bring this to the front. So we see now that we've got different colors. Of course, the buttons are a little faded out because it's just an overlay. But now we can see that compared to before, let's just do a little before and after. So here is the first version so far, and here is what we've changed it to. So just again, all we've done is removed a little bit of clutter so far and clean things up. Let's keep going though. So looking over here at these elements, I think that this is where a lot of the work can be done. I'm going to actually just check to make my life easier what the size of these are. So 14 pixels, okay, 14 pixels in regular. So what we're gonna wanna do is actually, I'm gonna just duplicate this so I have something that I can look back at. And I want to cover these for now. And with those covered, what we can start thinking about is I'll get in here, say background color. This was 14px. Okay, so something that you want to think about this, we're at 21 minutes. Okay, so I'm going to try and keep this one a little bit shorter than the last one, which went to like 50 minutes. But we've got our background color. Right now, there's no background color set. But then we also have our options for background image, linear gradient, which is also a background, a wave, which I'm not sure. Let's just see how this functionality works. So if I go here on this block, and then I go to add a wave below, and I'll pick one of the waves. Okay, so I get this, change the SVG settings, so I could say the fill is the primary color. Okay, so it creates this sort of wave. So if I go here and I make this background color, okay, it gives us this wave element. What I'm curious about is why this wave isn't is its own element and not its own element. So let me see here if we have. So I feel like the wave is an element, being that it's separate, although it's attached. So I'm kind of even confused to like how I get back to where I was after clicking on it, because I guess I could click back to this section, but now the wave is its own element. It just attaches to a block. So I think in terms of getting rid of the wave, since it's confusing, and allowing people to add that as a an element instead, and adding it to the element list would clean things up, make things a little bit simpler, and make it a little bit clearer, I guess. At least just in my humble opinion. Of course, there may be reasons why it's not, but just an idea. So what we're going to do is we're looking to, before we look at changing the look and feel of anything, we want to consolidate and just make things, get rid of things or put things in the right place if we can. So for background color, background image, linear gradient, and wave, I personally think that the way that this is set up, if we go to background, it says upload background image. So background image has this pop-up where you could add a background image. Linear gradient has this pop-up nav, and background color has this select list. I think that with background, there's all these different options, but they're all for a background. So personally, I think that we should combine these into like one single action, which is, background. So we could say the label background, but just instead of what we have here, say add a background. And maybe instead of having these two separately, they could be tabs in the same modal. So someone could add either a linear gradient or a background color. Of course, that requires a lot more work. Another option would be to set it as a check, as an option in a dropdown, and then if that's selected, then it would give you specific options. So I think with background, we could say we could have a dropdown, and now looking, I'm going to uncover some of these so we can see how it is right now. But so this is like kind of using the pretty standard or default backgrounds. We're just going to line everything up with where it currently is. Okay. If we see here, another thing that we'll look at, but it seems like the distance here, so this is 17 pixels here and also around 17 pixels here. Obviously this isn't perfect, but what you notice is that there's equal space above and below, so it's hard to know exactly what you're looking at. So instead of doing that, we're going to want to have something like, we'll make it 8 pixels below, and then something like 12, 14 pixels above. But for the background, let's stretch this out. I think also having some padding here, because knowing that this scroll bar is going to pop up, we want to have a little bit of additional padding. So I think without the scroll bar, this is what, 20 pixels. So we want to have something similar, knowing that the scroll bar is going to pop up. So let's do that. Let's just push this out to the scroll bar. And then, yeah, we've got 20 pixels now. So with background, I think, if it's going to be a drop down, we could use, I'd probably pull in an icon for this, but let's say if this is going to be a checklist, we could have no fill, we'll add a stroke, we'll make it similar to this. I'm just trying to go quickly here, but we could say, definitely want to pull that in. But we have a couple options here, which is we can have, for the background, we could have a drop down that says, because we don't want to have we have background, image, color, or gradient. So add a background color, or add a background image, or add a background gradient. I don't know if they're separate, if you could have all three. In that case, it would require a little bit more technical work again to allow people to add multiple backgrounds. But I think the flow of, hey, add a background, and say, I'm trying to think of like how to not make this like unfeasible for you, but having something here where, let's make this even darker for now but adding a text here, let's try and use the same font. We might just darken all of this, but we'll just say that it's a button for now. Of course, this isn't perfect, and I just don't want to spend too much time trying to find a perfect color scheme and whatnot. But what we can do that's a little bit darker, that'll work. We can have a button, to add a background, let's say, that potentially, see something really quick. Maybe we do something like a little bit darker. And I kind of like, that's fine, but maybe if we also had a small icon here, like a little image or color icon. Oops, my command key is falling off again, which isn't fun. Or actually, we will make this, we'll just do a stroke because we're just doing it as an example, that we would have a sort of icon there as we want that to, of course, line up, and we'll just rotate it a little bit so it's not super weird. But with add a background, then you could have a small list of backgrounds that people add. But I think that this popping up a modal that allows people to choose between a color, or what was it? Let's see, a color, a gradient, or an image would already, we've just removed 3 buttons and combined them together to be one. Additionally, we've taken the idea of adding a wave, and I think if we could put that under elements, we're also, again, reducing clutter and putting things where in their logical place. So if someone wants to add another, it's almost like a separate div element in my mind. It's, you know, separate from the top piece. So it is an additional element. So by doing that, now we can, you know, essentially just make life a little bit easier. Let's see. We might want to make this text a little bit darker. Well, you get the point. I don't want to spend, you know, too much time trying to key around with this, but let's see. I can easily get caught doing that and trying to make it perfect. But again, I just want to kind of give you these ideas, and then you can go in and work with them. But here is, let's see, actually, sorry, I'm just want to lighten this. Whatever. I'm going to play around with this way too much. As an example, the next thing, so we've gotten rid of 3 items now. Those 3 items that were under there, we've now replaced them with 1. And then you could have a list of the different backgrounds that are added on each element for people to interact with. The wave, again, we just said that we were going to move that to the elements panel. That's a decision that you can make. For border, let's see, let's duplicate this. And now again, so we have here 8 pixels on the bottom. We want to do something almost extreme to make it obvious. So like 14 pixels might be okay to do that. And then, you know, for the checklist, let's see. Whoops. My keyboard doesn't want to, or Figma doesn't want to do this for me. Okay, we'll just do it that way. So now we've got a drop down, and let's say, I think that, so none is an option, so I think it makes sense the way it is right now. But what might want to do is have this be, as it is there, this be more a white background. We'll do a lighter stroke. Again, I think this is a little oversaturated, but I don't want to spend too much time on that. So we're going to drag this again. The option is none. I think making these, so like if you compare these two, I think taking the defaults and making them a little bit bigger, so there's a little bit more space, is nice because they're pretty compact the way that they are. So right now, instead of, what is this, 30 pixels, maybe something like 36 or even 40, just to see 36. That gives it a little bit more of a modern feel, I guess you could say, rather than the standardized buttons. But then we can add in something like a, you know, another icon element. We'll just say, whoops. This isn't going to be perfect either. I'm just kind of making this on the spot. Pull that up and over. And now here we'll say border. We've got 14 pixels on the top. We're going to take this and we're going to make this 8. So, and we can kind of play with those values to see what works well for us in doing that. And this, because it's a little different, maybe we can back down. I don't want to keep playing with this too much. We'll just leave it for now. Border, we have none. I think the drop down is one thing I want to, I'll make the rest of these. We're just going to duplicate this for the sake of, what is that? We said 12 or 14. We said, yeah, 14. Because I want to pull these down. But so now we have border, color, and then we have 14 again, and this is border radius. Now I can pull this down. And as you can see, we now only have a few elements instead of the 4 that we had over here. So we've taken this section here of all these buttons and turned it into this. This definitely needs some work here, but I'm not going to get crazy over it. Let's just remove that for now. Center that. That's just like a kind of default button that people can use. But so we'll say border color. These are pretty standard. So instead of pulling the spacing up and kind of redoing that again, what I want to look at is the standard drop down. So the standard drop down for border color looks like this. We're going to take this and we're going to pull it into, why do these pictures not want to come up? Yeah, there we go. All right, now we've got this up here. Let's actually, we're going to pull this onto this one. So let's just do that. It's not perfect, obviously, but you get the idea. This is what the dropdown looks like now. I think it's like the standard or default, but we'll see that we have border primary, border secondary, border tertiary, border success, border danger. I think that the naming conventions is something I wanted to bring up, but so under font size, we have display 4, display 3, display 2, display 1. One easy improvement would be to say small, medium, large. If you want to be simpler, just say, hey, this is small, medium, large, or larger, large, medium, whatever it is. But give people just strict answers and not use the default, what is like maybe Tailwind or maybe Bootstrap terms there for the sizes. And then here where we have font weight, I think, again, we're repeating ourselves. So font weight bold, font weight bolder, font weight normal. Just remove the font weight and keep bold. So we're going to do this for border color, and here we have border primary, border secondary, border tertiary. I think what we can do is something much better than that and say when someone opens this drop down, they could have, we will just duplicate this, pull it down, and we're going to change these to 0, 0, do the same here. So with our dropdown, like this isn't obviously going to be perfect, but when styling a dropdown, I think we can give people some clues. So we have here our different options. So none is one that's currently selected, but we could say we have what we're using is primary. Let's give it some spacing here, tertiary, and what were the other ones? Let's see. Secondary, tertiary, success. So the one thing that I noticed is that with this, what I'm going to do is just add in a border as say this, is that, and these aren't even exactly necessary, but I think it's just something that might be interesting here. So one thing that I noticed is that there's no way of people knowing what their primary or tertiary colors are. Like I got in here and I don't really even know what the difference is between a primary and tertiary color. So let's see, 4 or 5. It's because this is a 1 pixel border. 2 pixels make sense. No, that's a little bit too thick. Sorry, hard to do 2 things at once. But one thing I noticed is, like I said, that you don't really know what the primary and tertiary and secondary colors are. So from a UX perspective, if I come in here and it's like button primary, button secondary, button tertiary, I'm kind of confused. So I think one thing that might be better is having a tooltip. So this is something I think could greatly benefit the app. This experience of everything together is doing something where, let's see. And this is not going to, here. So it's not perfectly centered, but we're not going to worry about it too much. Take something of this sort. And this is for, this is saying border radius. So we're just going to change these so to appease what I'm doing instead of trying to move anything around. Border color. So slide this over. And now we have, or we could put it over here so it's not really in the way. A little help button that people can click on in order to say, like, where do I go to change my colors? And by clicking that, they can see, hey, this is what border color is. So you could have a little pop-up box off of here, that a little modal that comes up that has a little bit of text that says, hey, you know, border color is blank. Here's where you go to find, to change your tertiary and success colors, etc., which could be a link to that element, to open up that panel or something like that, just to make people's lives a lot easier. Because for me, I don't really know where those are. With these, I don't really like these lines all that much. Let me give these an extra little bit of spacing, just neurotic. Again, you would want to, like, you know, work on the details and fine tune this, but we're already running up on 42 minutes here. So we're going to do a quick, just finish up what we're looking at. So let me go back in here and I'll go to our theme because I know where this is from poking around in the app, but we have our primary color, which we're going to drop in the square here. And then we have our secondary color. And we have our tertiary color. So now these are primary, secondary, tertiary. I don't know where the success color is. I'm on a color scheme. I can't change the success color. That's another thing that I would be curious about that maybe you'd want to explain with a tooltip here that says, hey, these colors are, you can't change them. But if I go here and I change the border color to success, I still don't see. Let's add a wave below. And then let's go in here and we will try and get our success color. Okay, so we've got our success color. And I have a color picker here. Beautiful. And there's our success color. So we'll drop that in. So what I think would be cool to do with these is to make small boxes and include them in the UI. So something like this. I think that's definitely too small. We'll bump these up a little bit here, but just to give you an idea, also let's see. Our bottom border there is 5, so let's see. I think if we do, you know, maybe 10 by 10 would be nice. Let's just grab all these, do the same. And those, so there now we can see like our actual colors. And this again isn't perfect, but we can see a separation and give people a little peek into their colors. Again, we're going to take this, actually, just to make everything a bit cleaner with what we've been doing. I'm going to just do this one last thing and just cover this up with the same idea that we had here. And that was type. Okay. So we've made some assumptions here and cleaned some things up, gotten rid of some elements and made a little bit clearer. This obviously there was, we're 45 minutes in now, and I think I don't want to just keep hammering away at things, but I think this gives you a pretty good idea where my head's at UX-wise, tooltips, onboarding, education, to help people understand how things work. I think you'll keep a lot more people around that way. And then UI wise, I think just getting away from some of the defaults. And then, like we saw here, removing clutter and making a clear distinction between the backgrounds, what is a nav item, and what is the actual screen they're designing. So let's look here. We will first look at this one. So we'll. So here is our current UI. Actually, no, this isn't even current. This has updates. So let's duplicate our current UI. What I want to do is just paste this picture on top for context of like what we're doing. And then now we have so this was the current UI. And then this is the changes that we made. So you can see how things have cleaned up a little bit. Of course, there was, a lot here. So hopefully this was helpful. Happy to answer any questions that you have. And feel free to, if you want to interact with me, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter. I'm at Shane Rostad. That's at ShaneRostad. I'll put a link down to that in the description here. But that's all for today.